How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another video discussing the inferior forms of Mephiles the Dark. Today we'll be looking at Infinite, the villain from the 2017 video game Sonic Forces, and how Sega failed to turn him into a better villain than Mephiles. My name is Lord Danny, and this is Mephiles Month.
Mephiles time.
So, Sega have insisted that they will never bring Mephiles back, as proven with how he was erased from Sonic Forces despite being in the original script as one of the Phantom Ruby clones. But even by cutting him from the game, fans still believed that Infinite was going to be a reincarnation of Mephiles or a piece of his soul which slipped through time. You know, like how people believe the Time Eater was also Mephiles. But this was proven to be wrong. In fact, Infinite was a complete disappointment. Fans expected so much from him, and got nothing. No interesting story, no memorable boss fights, no memorable moments. I mean, except for the obvious one, but that wasn't memorable for the right reason. Fans remember Mephiles mostly because of his story with Shadow and, of course, the fact that he killed Sonic. No other villain has done this yet. Now, Infinite did defeat Sonic and helped Eggman take over the world during a 6-month period, which in theory should be very impactful. But why don't we care about it? Because it happened at the very beginning of the game, and the world domination part was never shown. It was just represented by on-screen narration. Also, Infinite was helped by other villains. Yes, they were Ruby projections, but at this point, the player did not know that. We didn't know what Infinite was capable of. We didn't even know him. All we saw was some jackal silhouette kicking Sonic a few times with the help of older villains such as Chaos, Zaphic, and Metal Sonic. And he even had Shadow at his side. I think most fans were just interested in why Shadow was fighting more than anything. So overall, Infinite was someone we didn't know who had teamed up with Eggman and other villains to defeat Sonic. He didn't even say a word during this cutscene. As for Mephiles, when he defeated Sonic, it was actually in the game's final story. Before seeing this, the player would need to play through Sonic's, Shadow's, and Silver's stories entirely. We don't see Mephiles in Sonic's story, really, and in Silver's story, we see Silver gets manipulated by him. As Shadow, we begin to really understand Mephiles' true intentions, and we battle him twice. We are never able to completely defeat Mephiles, so his reunion with Iblis felt inevitable, and to achieve his goal, he had to kill Sonic to make Princess Elise cry and release Iblis from her body. Why is this effective? Again, this was near the end of the game. All we had to do after Mephiles killed Sonic was do a final 7-stage long level to get the Chaos Emeralds to revive Sonic, and then fight Solaris. We didn't have to play through the game for 29 more stages like we did with Sonic Forces after Infinite defeated Sonic. Also, we had gotten to know Mephiles. We knew everything he wanted. We knew what he wanted to become and why. We knew what happened to him in the past. We knew what he was capable of. And finally, he took matters into his own hands after toying with the heroes for long enough. We knew exactly what happened to lead up to this moment. With Infinite, we didn't really do anything but press the boost button in another Green Hill level. Infinite didn't leave the same impact as Mephiles. Not even his boss fights became memorable, and that's a grim thing to say, considering that Mephiles' were nothing special either. The one Infinite's boss fight I liked was the first one, where Sonic battled him on the back of a snake. It may have been easy, but for a first battle, it worked. As for the next two phases, meh. I remember when the footage of the Avatar battle with Infinite was released on YouTube as a promotion for the game, and people were commenting things like, "Please say this isn't the only Infinite boss fight, this looks kinda lame." Most people guessed that Infinite would be like Chaos, where he had multiple stages, and they were right, but obviously he didn't get as much love and attention as Chaos did. His second boss fight is really easy. As you can see in this footage, I've literally beaten him in 16 seconds. The actual style of the fight is also boring, as it is a zoomed out 2D segment. It doesn't really feel like anything is happening in this boss fight, to be honest, and it adds nothing to the powers Infinite displayed against Sonic in his first battle. The only new thing he adds is robot friends. And the third battle would honestly be cool if we hadn't already done it before with Metal Sonic. Again, there are no new powers being displayed here. All the new abilities such as drilling through the floor or summoning robots as a shield are simply rehashed from the Metal Sonic battle. Everything else is just dodging the red cubes, as all Infinite's boss fights have been. You're supposed to feel like you're dealing with a threat because Infinite enlarges himself for this fight, but he's just nothing. It would have honestly been better if we were fighting one of those infinite chaos monsters from the capital city level. You know what would have made this final Infinite Showdown interesting? If it was all done in his illusion world. Infinite is capable of messing with minds. We saw that in episode Shadow, he was completely messing with Shadow's head by making him believe he was in Green Hill Zone talking to Rouge about finding Omega. In cutscenes we see him turn the world orange and glitchy, which is something that only happens for a few seconds in boss fights if you take damage. If he is truly the master of illusion, then he should be constantly getting at us. The first boss fight should remain as it is, but the second one should have been set in the illusion world, or had random moments where the illusion world would appear regardless of whether or not you were damaged. And the third one should be set in the illusion world entirely, with a much larger Infinite being what you're dealing with. In fact, Infinite might not even be visible most of the time. You might need to expose him. Maybe he takes on the form of different friends, like Silver or Espio, like how he became Rouge to mess with Shadow. And maybe he should do things like remind the Avatar of the time he was a coward by turning the world around them into that destroyed city where the Avatar and Infinite first met. That would have been an effective battle. This entire third battle should have also taken place in null space so that Infinite has full control, just to make him feel like he's difficult to defeat. Mephiles only had 2 boss battles despite Sonic 06 having 3 different stories, but let me go through them with you. They weren't perfect, of course, mainly because of Sonic 06's gameplay, but they were unique compared to the other boss battles. The first Mephiles boss takes place in a volcano. Mephiles assumes a new form to battle Shadow with, a form we only see in Shadow's story and the final story. He then becomes Shadow's Shadow, making him untouchable, so the player must defeat Mephiles' minions to gain enough energy. Once the energy bar is full, Shadow can tap into his chaos powers, which will expose Mephiles. While Shadow is in this state, Mephiles remains exposed and will go back into your shadow once your power runs out. This mechanic is a little flawed because Mephiles is incredibly easy to hit and Shadow's chaos form lasts for a long time. If it only lasted for as long as an invincibility power-up or something, then this boss fight would become a little lengthier and maybe would have more room to add other phases to it. But overall, the idea of the battle is fine. The second battle takes place in some desert ruins where Shadow and Mephiles show down for a final time in a feeble attempt to stop Mephiles from going through with his plans to destroy the world. It's very similar to the first boss fight, except Mephiles doesn't just become your Shadow. He fuses with his minions and creates an entire pool of darkness beneath Shadow's feet, and by combining with his minions, he is able to create much more powerful foes for Shadow to battle with. These are large monsters that fire lasers, and Shadow must destroy them to do the same thing as he did in the first fight, gain enough energy to expose Mephiles. I think Mephiles becomes harder to hit in this fight, and I'm sure the fight actually lasts longer, so again, it's effective. It's basically a harder version of the original battle, while with Infinite, all of his fights are different in terms of gameplay, but they don't actually require you to know anything else about him. He doesn't make his illusions harder to dodge, he doesn't use his illusions without damaging you, he does nothing new to show that he's stronger. Every battle is just him throwing cubes at whoever is fighting him. Nothing else. I've already talked about what makes Mephiles superior to Infinite in terms of character in that one video I made which randomly got recommended to everyone on YouTube 3 months after I uploaded it. So I'm guessing you guys have probably already seen that. If not, then I'll give a brief overview as to why Mephiles is better than Infinite. Mephiles carries out his threats and his actions speak louder than his words. If he says he will do something, he does it, and only stops carrying something out if something severe gets in his way. Infinite doesn't do this. He makes threats and then willingly leaves his victims when he has the chance to kill them. Mephiles has no master. He was made in an experiment which killed the researchers and the Duke of Soliana, so his creators died and he didn't seem to care. After that, he was accidentally freed from the Scepter of Darkness, and only followed his own rules. He didn't even work with anyone. Instead, he had people like Silver work for him, and toyed with characters like Shadow. As for Infinite, he was loyal to Eggman and showed no signs of betraying him. He didn't even have any restraints put on him to keep him under Eggman's control. He was there willingly, and then he was actually betrayed by Eggman in the end. So basically, Mephiles actually did things while Infinite didn't. The only thing Infinite has that Mephiles doesn't is a theme song. Like, Sega, come on, can't you at least give this guy a theme song? If Princess Elise can have one, then so can Mephiles. Crush 40, make this guy a theme song for the 30-year anniversary, please, he needs something. To conclude this video, let's just discuss what would happen if these two fought each other. Mephiles would win. Let's face it, this shouldn't be something so complicated. Infinite's powers aren't even his. They come from the Ruby. Without the Ruby, Infinite is just a guy with a sword who probably knows quite a bit about military and hand-to-hand combat, but he got his butt kicked by Shadow, while Shadow got his butt kicked by Mephiles. Twice. He had to use all of his powers to get out of that situation alive. Mephiles' powers are his. He doesn't have anything that actually enhances his powers besides the Chaos Emeralds. Without the Chaos Emeralds, he is still capable of putting up a good fight, which is apparently from 10 years of evolving or taking power from Shadow's shadow, I don't know. Even with the Ruby, Infinite was still loose to Mephiles. Mephiles is capable of creating clones that are real rather than illusions, and he is practically immortal. The only thing that can stop him is erasing him from existence, while Infinite is only capable of casting illusions in hopes that his opponents can't dodge them, and if they do, he basically just accepts being hit until he's defeated. So there you have it, a little description of Infinite, the character who was supposed to be Mephiles' spiritual successor, who only turned out to be a disappointment to fans. Infinite was overall just poorly executed, and had no real impact in his game, and he was weak in comparison to the practically undefeatable Mephiles. But hey, some of you guys might disagree with me on that. You might believe Infinite is better than Mephiles, or maybe you believe he has the potential to be so much better. Let me know in the comments. I'm Lord Danny, signing out.